Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. Hopefully other folks will wander in. So hi everybody, welcome. My name is Randeep Kullar and I am the Career Services Manager here at UC Berkeley Global. And I want to take some time today to talk to you about internships and internships in the sense of how they can help you progress forward in your career and really as a gateway to career exploration and advancement. So I want to start the presentation off by talking about myself and what my own career exploration journey has been up until this point. And I think it's really important to understand that everyone has their own journey when it comes to deciding what their career path is going to be. And it's not necessarily always a linear path. I think when we're growing up, we're always taught like you go to school, you get your career and you're set. Like it's a very linear space. And that's actually usually not reality. And usually there's lots of twists and turns and you end up in a variety of different points before you actually end up where you want to end up. And then even then, when you're successful and you're happy and you're set, a few years later, you might decide you want to change paths again. So I think it's an ever changing and growing process. So I think it's something that's really important to understand because I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be able to understand what's next, what I want to do with my life. And especially when you're younger and you're in high school, your undergraduate years, I think there is a lot of pressure. So I wanted to hopefully ease some of that pressure by talking a little bit about my own journey. So I wanted to be a doctor growing up. And as you might can see, I'm not a doctor right now. I'm a counselor. And the doctor space for me was very much, my parents telling me, oh, doctors are great. That's where we want to be. You'd make a great doctor. And so I remember growing up playing doctor, and, wanting to not be a nurse because growing up, I thought nurses reported to doctors and that was not something I wanted to do. So I had a lot of misperceptions around doctors and what it meant. And I got to high school and I realized I don't even like science. So why am I trying to become a doctor? So at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I've been wanting to be a doctor my entire life. Now all of a sudden, I don't know what I want to do. So what do I do? College is coming up. I had just gotten into Davis for undergrad, and I was freaking out because I was like, okay, I don't have a path now. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? I love history. History has always been a passion of mine. I thoroughly enjoy those classes. Let's just sign up for be a history major, and we'll figure it out later. We'll figure out when I get to Davis what I'm actually going to do. So I was a history major at Davis. And when you're a history major, people are like, oh, what are you going to do with history? And the two things that naturally come to mind with history tend to be, at least when I was in undergrad, they tended to be, you're either going to be a lawyer, you might go into politics, or you're going to be a teacher. And so for me, I was just like, okay, law, that's a logical path, right? I'm studying history, I'm learning about people, let's become a lawyer. So my first year of undergrad, I went through learning the campus and understanding student orgs and whatnot my first semester. And then my second semester, I decided, okay, I need to do an internship because I can't get into law school without an internship. That was what was instilled in me growing up and in college as well. You need the experience in order to be able to get a job, right? And so I applied for an internship my second semester of undergrad, and it was for a judicial affairs position on campus. And this position was a position in which students and faculty work together when students get caught, say, cheating or any kind of misconduct. And we had hearings that were very lawyer-like. So I was a lawyer and I was defending a student who said that they didn't cheat, and a faculty member was, being defended by another lawyer who was another student who was saying, yes, you cheated. And so it became the space of like, okay, let's learn what the legal system looks like in the space of the campus, not legalities in terms of, the city or state or federal government. But I learned very quickly that I did not like that space. I found it to be very adversarial. So these colleagues that I worked with, like other students that were with me, I found myself being very adversarial with them because it was like, no, my client is right, your client is wrong. And it was too much for me. I enjoyed, however, other aspects of my internship where I was advising the students, where I was advising the faculty. And that's what I ended up realizing really quickly. I was like, okay, this is the space that I really enjoy being in. And so I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to be a lawyer. So what now? What's left? And I'm like, okay, history, working with students, let's be a teacher. That's a logical explanation right there, a logical jump, right? So I decided to add an education minor to my history major. and I had to do another internship via that minor. And I worked in schools, and I was like, okay, this is fine. Like, I'm enjoying it, but I don't know if I really want to do it or not. And I get to my senior year and I'm sitting there like, okay, so what now? Do I go to school, graduate school, to become a teacher? Or do I explore something different? Do I want to do that? What do I want to do? And I had a random conversation with one of my supervisors for my internship. And she said to me that she studied higher education. And as a senior in college, I'm like, what is higher education? Like, that's a thing. Like, who does that? Who studies higher education? And after that conversation, I went and did some research. I looked up higher ed programs, and, it makes sense once you think about it. All the folks that work at colleges and universities obviously got there somehow, and studying that space makes sense, but it's not something that I had thought about because it's not a career that I had been exposed to. The careers that I had been exposed to were the lawyers, the teachers, the engineers, the doctors, the very standard spaces of careers that we all tend to be exposed to, whether it's via family members or it's via media, film, like whatever it might be. So in this moment, I was just like, oh, there's more options. I don't have to just be a lawyer or a teacher. And so I decided to get my master's in counseling. And, that was a 3-year program. And during my master's program, I also had to do internships. I had to do a mandatory internship during that time. And one was at a high school where I was doing college and career counseling. And the other one was at a community college where I was doing career counseling. And after that, I transitioned into my actual career, my job, which was my first job at UC Berkeley, which was a coordinator position where I was working with freshman students, transfer students, helping them transition to college and running internships. So in terms of my career path, as you can see, it was kind of all over the place. But if you look at these different spaces on the screen, where you look at the doctor, the lawyer, or the teacher, the thing that they had all in common was helping people, working with people, and really supporting people in different spaces. And that's what I realized was the key to my career journey and what I really wanted to do when I got to that space of deciding, what, counseling is really where I enjoy working and where I enjoy being. But it took me a while to actually figure that out. And it's those internships themselves that actually made me realize what it was that I wanted. So if you look at my internship resume, so these are just the internships that I've done. And if you look at my undergraduate degree, during my bachelor's, I had 2 years of an internship in judicial affairs, which actually resulted in me getting a paid job at that office. So I was actually handling my own cases of misconduct outside of the internship, which was a pretty big deal because I was actually one of the first students in that space to be able to do that. And then I had my teaching internship, of course, that I mentioned. But these 2 internships are actually what resulted in me getting my graduate school admissions. So when you think about graduate school, or at least a counseling program in graduate school, you have to have at least 2 to 3 years of experience in order to even be considered for admissions. And I wasn't working. I didn't have that experience necessarily, in my opinion, right? But then when you look at my resume, I actually had tons of experience in that space, in counseling students, in counseling faculty. And I was the youngest student in my program. I was 21 when I started my graduate program, and everyone else was between the ages of 25 to 35. So if I hadn't done those internships, I wouldn't have gotten into that program. And that's a pretty big deal to think about, especially again, when we think about, oh, only jobs can get you those experiences. Only a job counts as experience. And that's actually not the reality. And if you look at my graduate studies, I had 2 years again of internship experience. And I actually ended up getting offered a paid teaching position at the community college that I was at because of the work that I did at my internship. And if I hadn't built those connections and if I hadn't built that trust, that offer wouldn't have come to me. And when I left my studies between undergraduate and graduate, I had a total of 4.5 years of unpaid internship experience. And the other thing I do want to make sure I address is that I was on full scholarship and I had financial aid, and I was working on a side job as well in terms of a student position. It wasn't something great. It was like an assistant position. So not only was I doing internships, but I was also helping support myself in that space. So I also want to make sure that we address the fact that, the ability to do an unpaid internship isn't necessarily something that everyone can afford to do, that you need to have the resources to be able to do that or the support to be able to do that. So I do, again, want to make sure that I acknowledge that space. But that 4.5 years is what got me a full-time position at UC Berkeley after graduation. And without those internships, I wouldn't have gotten that. So why do you care? Why does any of this matter to you? And this is really, I think, the core of what we're talking about today, is really thinking about, okay, so why should you care about internships? What does that mean? So if we want to look at statistics, right? I gave you my story and how that played into the internship space, but let's talk about actual stats. Of the class of 2019 seniors who applied for a full-time job, 57.5% of students who received a job offer completed an internship. In contrast, 43.7% of those who received a job offer did not complete an internship. So when you're looking at the stats, completing an internship actually increases your job offer, the opportunity to get a job, by 16%. That's a pretty large percentage, 16%. So again, concrete space of what it means and why this is actually important to you, and for something for you to actually be thinking about in terms of where you're going and what your next steps are for your own career path. And so beyond that, when you look at, okay, got the stats, so what else? You have my story again that we talked about, but when you're thinking about an internship, or sorry, when you're thinking about jobs and what's coming next for you, you're competing with candidates who have years of experience. How many of you have seen job descriptions that say, like entry-level job positions, that will say we want 3 to 5 years of experience? That's actually very common in a lot of spaces. Unfortunately for those folks, where it's that kind of, you know, chicken and egg space, where it's an entry-level position, you need experience to get the job, but you need the job to get the experience. So what do you do, and how do you tackle that situation? And that's, again, where this internship space can really help and come in handy, because the candidates that you're competing with not only have the years of experience, but they also have extensive professional networks. And if you don't know this, I'm sure most of you know this actually, networks, who you know, makes a huge difference. The people that you know and who trust you to be able to say, like, hey, you know, Matt here has, you know, these amazing skills. I met him and I've worked with him. You know, I think you should really consider him for a position. And that's because Matt has a relationship with me, and I thought about Matt when I heard about this position that was open in my company. And that makes a huge difference in the space that we're in. So these experts or these candidates that are competing with you, they have that, and they have the soft skills. And when we say soft skills, what I'm referring to is the skills that are beyond just being able to code, beyond just being able to create a website, or beyond being able to, open someone up and do heart surgery. Like the soft skills, which are the communication skills, the ability to deal with politics in an office, the ability to work with people from diverse backgrounds. Those are the soft skills that you need. And to be honest, usually the ones that will make you successful. The ability to work with people in a variety of different ways is what's going to help you progress in your career and actually move forward. Obviously, you need the hard skills as well. You need to be able to be competent in the work that you're doing and have the skills, the hard skills. The soft skills also, I think, are something that are not mentioned as much when we're talking about internships and careers. And I think it's something that we really, really need to discuss, and how you can gain those skills. And again, these folks that you're competing with their networks and their experience, they have references. So for example, I've been in the field for 10 years. And in those 10 years, I've built a vast network of experiences of people that I know. My supervisor previously was a CEO. She, the one before that was a VP. Right now, my supervisor is the assistant dean. So think about that. If the assistant dean is writing me a reference for a job, or if the VP of a company is writing me a reference for a job, what that looks like and what that means, right? So those high-level references are going to be really important when you're thinking about these kinds of spaces and who you're competing with. And at the end of the day, an internship really is the opportunity to gain a meaningful experience. And when I say meaningful experience, I think a lot of times people think about internships and they're thinking, oh, I don't want to fetch coffee. Oh, I don't want to be just making copies and things like that. To be honest, any base internship will have administrative work, We all do administrative work. You know, I, as a director or manager or assistant dean, we all have to occasionally make a copy or occasionally do things like that. And the intern is going to be, you know, at the lowest end of that pool. And so you're going to have to do some administrative work. But the core of your internship should not be that. The core of your internship should really be gaining the skills and the experience in the field to be able to understand what your next step is going to be, and to gain those soft skills and how to work with people. And it's amazing how many folks don't actually know how to, you know, to engage in an office environment because you've never had the experience. You know, you've been in school your entire life potentially, and how do you ask for a day off? How do you know, deal with an issue that comes up? Like, what if, you know, you think your supervisor's mad at you, or, you know, you think you accidentally, you know, said something, you know, insulting to a colleague? How do you deal with that in the professional space? And that's where these internships, which are short term, are really a great place to actually to learn, to make those mistakes, and to have a mentor to really be able to be like, hey, Randeep, I saw that you did this, you know, it's okay, like, let's have a conversation around this. Or for you to be able to go to your mentor, who is your supervisor, or, you know, colleagues that are in the office, and to be able to be like, hey, was that uncomfortable, or was that just me, or how is this working out here? And to really get that advice, and to learn from your peers and your mentors. And again, like, the soft skills, the references that you'll be getting from these experiences are going to go a long way when it comes to actually getting to that point of applying for a job and applying for graduate school. So an internship is, again, really, really important in that space. Now, this is a chart that I got from the Nace 2020 competencies list. And it's actually really interesting to think about and look at, because a lot of students that I've worked with, now mind you, I've been working with students in internships for the past 10 years. So I know internships very well, and I know how students tend to be in terms of that space and their levels of experience and their expectations. And the red here is, these are the essential, you know, skills, that basically competencies that an employer is looking for. And if you think about these are all soft skills. These aren't hard skills that you're necessarily gaining in your undergraduate studies, right? And look at the red bars that are going forward, that are on the screen. That's how employers are, that's what folks are coming in with, and what's considered essential in terms of how essential something is considered. So for example, professionalism and work ethic, 95% of employers thought it was essential. And only 46.5% of the folks that were coming in, the recent grads, were rated as being proficient in that space. So look at the reds versus the blues. There's a lot of red here, and the blue it tends to be a little bit lower than that red, other than when you look at information technology and maybe global and multicultural fluency. Now, when you look at these skills, do you consider these skills something that you're learning in school? Some of these you might, like written communication or teamwork and things like that. But career management, are you typically learning that? Or professionalism, maybe, how do you work with a professor? How do you work, you know, on a team, things like that. But again, a lot of these spaces are spaces that aren't taught in academics, because you really have to be in a space where you are working in a professional realm to be able to learn these skills. And most graduates don't necessarily come out with those skills because they haven't experienced them. And there's a huge discrepancy between what employers are seeing and what they are expecting to be seeing. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about, okay, well, I need to learn how to code. Okay, yes, you need to learn how to code, but you also need to learn how to do these other spaces and actually be successful in a workplace beyond that. Okay, so we've talked about an internship, why it's important, and, you know, what they can do for you. And obviously there's a lot more than what we've discussed, but I just giving you a general overview. So how do you get an internship? That's another big piece, right? What does that look like for you when you are, you know, say you're new to undergrad, or say you're a graduate student, or say, you know, you're mid-career and you're trying to think about how to just to shift careers, and what does that look like? First and foremost, it's really important to understand the type of work that you're looking to do, the field that you want to explore, and the role that you're looking to explore in a specific type of organization. So when I say field versus role, those are two very different things. So a field or a sector can be like education. Education is a sector. Technology is a sector. Health is a sector or a field. And that is a large kind of umbrella term, whereas a role is very much more detailed, and it's very specific. So for example, I might be interested in marketing, a marketing role, say for example, an education institution like Berkeley, a tech firm like Apple, or a health organization like Kaiser Permanente, which is a hospital organization here. All of those firms or organizations, all of those sectors need someone to do marketing. So do you care where you do marketing because marketing is most important to you? Or actually you really want to do marketing in health because health is really what's important to you? Or you really want to do marketing in tech and that's kind of the space you want to be in? So those are two very distinct things that people tend not to think about, and they're important to think about. And that's where I think this first point of talking to experts to explore the field and the type of job you want to work in is really important, because they're the ones that are going to be able to tell you, well, think about not only the field that you want to go into, but also what it takes to be in marketing, or what it takes to be in data science, and what does that look like in the field. I know a few of you are raising your hands. I see that, and I'm going to hold. If you have questions, please just go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and I promise I will get back to you towards the end. But yeah, so explore, talk to experts. And I also acknowledge that talking to experts can be difficult. Like if you're, a new freshman, you don't know any experts in marketing, or you don't know any experts who are coders, then what do you do? And that's where I think it comes into play. That's where taking advantage of the resources you have on campus comes into play, or people that are in your family or your friends. So maybe your friend's mom happens to be in marketing, or your professor is a marketing professor and he has folks that he knows that are in the field. So how do you take advantage of those networks that exist both on the personal level as well as on the academic level in that space? So it's really important to consider the access to those spaces. The other really important thing is assessing your skills. A lot of times students will come to me and they'll say, I want to do an internship, in data science, but I have not taken any data science classes. And I immediately tell them, well, we may need to reassess the kind of internship you're looking for, because a field like data science needs concrete data science skills. So having these conversations with a career counselor, or with an instructor, or somebody who knows a little bit more about the space is also going to be important, because you have to be realistic about the skills that you have and what you don't have and what you're looking to gain in these internships. And so that's where academics is really important, because maybe you're a freshman and you really want to do an internship your first summer, but you haven't quite gotten to the courses that will give you the core skills to be able to get that internship that you really want. So you understand that, you recognize that. So what do you do instead? You really want to do an internship your first summer. Okay, well then do an internship that doesn't require you to have those specific skills. Do an internship that is the building blocks to you to get to that space. And a lot of times students will say, well, no, I only want to do data science, I only want to do this, but they don't realize that they need X before they can get to that space. So it's really, really important to have those conversations and to really be realistic about those skills, because otherwise what's going to happen is you're going to be let down because you're not getting the opportunities that you want, because you aren't being realistic necessarily. The other space in terms of looking at where you can find internships is really your career center. Most career centers and most campuses and most academic, not most, a lot of academic departments will actually have built-in internship programs. So for example, in my graduate program, my counseling office had a full repertoire, like a full list of internships that we could apply for. And, career centers will sometimes have that as well. And even here at Extension, I actually help run the professional internship program. And that's a program students that apply to Extension and come here can apply to. And what we do is we help you, my team helps you, and we go through the career counseling piece and the coaching and the interview prep, and we actually help find you an internship. And we have a database of companies that we work with that have been taking Extension students for years, and they work with us to be able to find students that have the appropriate fit and get you an internship for a semester. So lots of organizations have established internship programs that you can access via the academics or via the student success centers on campus. So it's important to access those centers and really start exploring and seeing what the options are. The other big space is the Career Center events and that they're offering. So lots of events around networking and conferences and panels and things like that. They'll have, experts come and talk to you about what it means to be a counselor, or what it means to be in the healthcare field, or whatever it might be. And those are great places to meet people. And it can be very daunting to go to events like that because, like, think about a networking event. And I've been in the field again for over a decade now, and I get nervous going to networking events. It's like, okay, well, why am I here? What am I doing? And then I always have to remind myself, I'm not here to ask for a job. I'm not here to ask for an internship or to ask for something. I'm here to make relationships. I'm here to make connections. And with that in mind, if you're going in, you're like, hey, I'm Randeep, tell me about yourself. Like, what kind of work do you do? And, people love talking about themselves, to be quite honest. And that's a great segue into a conversation with somebody that you might meet that's in the field. And they're telling you about, how amazing it is to be an engineer. And, and then next thing you're emailing them and being like, hey, it was great chatting with you. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about your field and how you got there. And, do you have any advice for me? So it's really, again, small building blocks of getting to where you're going without necessarily thinking, okay, I need to go to this event to offer an internship. So think about it in that space, right? It's not necessarily jumping the gun and being like, okay, I need a job. It's not, that should never be your initial intent. The intent should always be to build the relationship. And that goes to career and internship fairs. Most universities will have fairs where companies will come and they're recruiting and they want to talk to you about, the opportunities they have. And those can be scary too. Like, there's hundreds of other students that are there and they all have their resumes, and there's all these recruiters that are there, and you're like, oh my god, like, what do I ask this person? Like, what if my resume isn't good enough, or am I wearing the appropriate clothing, or am I underdressed, am I overdressed? Like, there's all these thoughts that we have when we're at these events, and it's really important to want to attend these events, but then also to understand that everyone in the room feels the same way as you do, and these recruiters are here to help support you. These recruiters are here because they want you. So in that space, what I always tell my students is, I was like, you know what? Just have a conversation. Just ask them what they're looking for. The other really interesting thing about going to these fairs is that a lot of times we don't realize what a company is looking for. So for example, you'll see a company name and you're like, oh, okay, this is, a software company. And I'm a I don't know, a communications person. And you're like, oh, well, they're only hiring software engineers. That's all they want. It's a software company. But we forget that these software companies are little microcosms and little universes, and they have every single like type of role really available. So you need HR, you need someone that's doing communications, you need the PR person, you need folks that are doing, diversity and equity work. So every company really has a diversity of roles. We just pigeonhole these companies in thinking, oh, they're just this, they're just that. So these fairs are actually a really good way to talk to folks and be like, okay, well, what kinds of positions are you actually hiring for? And what are you looking for in a student or an intern or whatever it might be? So take advantage of those events. There's so many students that I know that just won't go because they're intimidated or they think it's a waste of time. And there are so many opportunities that will come out of that space that I think are missed opportunities. The other big space that students don't take advantage of at their universities is their professors and their academic departments. So many professors will say, I never have a student come to me during office hours. And, so many academic departments where a student doesn't even know where their academic department is. They might go once because they need to get something signed off for, advising or whatever it might be. But take advantage of your professors. They are experts in the subject matter that they're teaching you. Go to their office hours, talk to them about the field, talk to them about the networks they have. Again, they're a very underutilized resource, campuses across the world. And if you can get in with a professor, there's lots of opportunities for research, even with the professor. You could potentially be doing research with the professor, or, an opportunity. A lot of the professors here at Extension are actually experts in the field, and you never know, they're actually working professionals, and you never know when an opportunity might come up with them in their own organization, and they might need somebody. And if they see somebody that's been proactive and has been going to speak to them, they might actually be like, hey, you know, I saw Sam the other day. He's been very proactive and coming to talk to me, and he's really interested and he's really engaged. I think this opportunity would be great for Sam. So think about that as well. The other underutilized space is, again, your personal network, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. Think about your friends. Think about, you know, your family members that you forget. You're like, oh yeah, you know, my sister's a therapist, or, you know, my brother's an artist. And I've been like, oh, I have students who are like, oh yeah, like, you want to go into graphic design? My sister does that actually. So let me make that connection for you, and she'd be great for you to talk to. So our own personal networks are actually very robust if you take the time to actually think about it. So one of the activities sometimes I have students do is I have them draw a circle with themselves, and then put their family, and then maybe their friends, their aunts and uncles, and write what they're doing, write their career paths and what information they have access to, and then talk to those folks. Like, again, we don't utilize that resource, and we forget because they're there. It's normal. Like, it's just mom. You know, mom doesn't know anything about this and blah, 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 blah. But you forget that mom's friend, you know, Susie, is a huge architect, and, you know, things like that. So think about your personal networks too when you're thinking about the kinds of opportunities that you can take advantage of. This is something that I think most of us probably already know, but professional LinkedIn profiles are really, really important. And I think sometimes people create LinkedIn profiles, but they don't really fully utilize the tools that are available via LinkedIn, and their profiles aren't fully done or created. So it is really important to make sure as you're coming into this space of exploration that you do really take some time to update the LinkedIn profiles and make it professional. And not only LinkedIn, I will also say your other social media presence as well. A lot of people forget that when folks are looking you up for jobs or for internships, they Google you, they look at your social media profile, and there have been numerous cases. I've done this. I've Googled student workers or, you know, other folks that I've hired, and I've decided not to hire them or not to, you know, take them on for an interview or whatever it might be, because they had something that was very inappropriate on their social media presence that they didn't take the time to actually, you know, update, block, whatever it might be. So do a full swipe of your social media, because if it's out there, someone will find it, and you never know when it's going to come back and cause a problem for you. And let's see, so beyond that, I mean, this is, again, much more common sense, is thinking about actually preparing yourself. There are a lot of folks that I know that will go into interviews and not have looked at anything. They won't know anything about the company's website. They won't actually prepare for an interview. And preparing for interviews can be difficult and annoying, and you don't want to do it. That's very standard for all of us in that space. But the more you prepare for an interview, the more likely you are to be successful. It's proven fact. As annoying as it may be, you definitely need to do that. And when I say prepare, I actually mean like go to a mirror and actually prepare, or work with family and friends or counselors and do mock interviews. It's just a really important space that I think students take for granted sometimes. I'm great at talking to people. I'll be fine. Like I can handle this. I know my field. And again, they realize that when they get to that space, we're nervous. It's normal. We're human. So it is really important to think about actually preparing and understanding yourself, and the ability to talk about yourself. So in an interview, this kind of goes back to my first point, or my second point about assessing your skills. You can talk, but can you talk about yourself? Can you talk about how you're an asset to this company? Can you talk about the skills you have and how you gain those skills? And how do you present those scenarios to this organization? That's really, really important. And a lot of folks don't know how to do that. What they do know is, oh yeah, I was a counselor. I worked with students. Okay, that's not a skill. You worked with students. And what skill did you gain from working with students, right? How do you talk about that skill? And that's where you have to actually take some time to analyze and think and really be able to define that space. So yeah, so there's lots of things that you can do in order to get an internship. It's really just realizing how vast your network and your connections really are, whether it's via the academic realm or the social support services that you have at the university, at the organization that you're at, or even your personal networks. So that's, again, we're here for that. We're here to support you in that space at the university as well. Okay, what do you do when you're at an internship, right? What does that look like? And the points I have here are very basic. And when I was talking to my supervisor about this presentation, he said to me, he's like, you should probably build that out a little bit more. And I was just like, you know what, this is all common sense. I was like, it is common sense. But most people don't think about it, actually. And so I decided to keep the slide as it is because it's something that, again, people aren't thinking about concretely. So when I say learn everything you can, what does that mean exactly? That means when you're going into an internship, don't assume you know everything. A lot of times students will go in, they'll be like, oh, I already know this. I don't need to learn this. I don't need to, this is easy. And then they get there and they're like, okay, they close themselves off to opportunities because they think they already know. And that's not the best way to move forward. So take advantage of the people that you have around you. One of the big things I always tell students actually is a lot of times when students come to me, they say, okay, I want to work at Google. I want to work at Facebook. I want to work at these big tech companies because we're in Silicon Valley, we're in San Francisco. It makes complete sense. And then when we talk about startups or smaller companies, a lot of students will say, oh, I don't want to work for a startup, but I really want a big name. And they don't realize that a lot of times these big companies, you might work for a Google, but when you're working for a Google, you're doing one job at Google. Like it's one little thing. You're the marketing intern and you are doing that one job. And again, you might be exposed to other things, but it's typically very much, you have your job and you stay in that lane. When you're working for a startup, for example, you could be sitting at a table with the VP, the CEO, the head of marketing, the head of HR, the head of finance, and you're the marketing intern. And all of a sudden now you have access to all of these individuals in various different fields. And one of the key things to an internship is gaining as much exposure to different areas and different fields so you understand what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And say you were really interested in marketing, but then you realized, you know what, the finance guys actually, like, I love what they do. I love numbers, and this is actually a really cool opportunity for me. And you end up doing a project with the finance guy because you're in the room with that individual. So it's really important to think about the opportunities that are being presented to you in this space and how you can take advantage of that when you are at your internship versus just thinking about that one space that you're in. And that ties directly into connecting with people. So when you are at an organization and you have these 10 individuals that are sitting next to you, or 20 individuals that are there, are you actually taking the time to say hello to everybody? One of the first things that I did when I started this job was I was like, hey, let's set up meetings with everybody. Let's talk to people, right? Get to know people. And that's just, a coffee or a lunch or a, hey, I'm Randeep, and I'd love to hear more about how you got here and what you're doing, and how I can help support you in this process. Like just things like that. You're not asking somebody for anything, you're building a relationship. And those relationships, again, are what's going to help you gain more abilities, more skills, and again, in the future, build that network that could potentially come in handy for you. So that's really important. I think it's actually one of the biggest things when it comes to any kind of work that you do is really connecting with the people. The other big thing is not thinking that you're above any task. This is actually a common thing that I hear for students is like, oh, my supervisor is making me, do a pie chart about this, or they're making me write notes about this. And I want to do something different. I want something bigger. And yes, 100%, you should be working on projects. You should be doing larger scale things, but you have to do the small tasks in order to get there. And one of the things that students forget is that you have to build that trust, and that trust is built by small tasks. I've had multiple interns throughout my career, and I've never given an intern something really big to do in the first week or two. Never. I need to trust you. You need to gain my trust. You need to show me that you have the skills to be able to do these basic tasks before I'm going to give you the larger tasks, and I can trust you with those. So take the small tasks, take anything that's being thrown at you and run with it. Show initiative, be flexible, and do what's being given to you, because that's how you're going to build the blocks to actually be able to get other projects and other opportunities. It also goes into this saying yes to any opportunity. A lot of times, and then you have to be careful about this too. Let me put a caveat to that, in the sense that depending on the organization, for example, if I'm your supervisor and I'm telling you to do X, Y, and Z, and Matt, who's another supervisor, comes and says, hey, I want you to do this project, there could be conflict there, of course. So you have to be very cognizant of what, the politics and dynamics of an organization might be. But that's where you're learning, right? You're learning these politics, you're learning these dynamics because you might not have been exposed to those. So say yes to any opportunity in the sense, like, make sure you have permission to do everything that you're going to be doing. But yes, say yes to the opportunities that are coming at you. And I don't just mean work opportunities. I mean, say yes to the coffee that your supervisor is, saying like, hey, let's grab some coffee or let's grab some lunch. Say yes to the after work happy hour because that's where everyone's connecting. And say yes to the networking events that the company is throwing, or, to whatever event it might be, whatever project it might be. Just say yes, because you are here to learn and you are here to gain those networks and those skills. And you're going to gain those by doing a diverse number of things and really taking advantage of those opportunities that are coming at you. The other thing I'll say is ask questions. A lot of times students don't feel comfortable asking questions because they think that they are, they think that they're going to look stupid, or that people are going to think that they don't know what they're talking about. And in that space, it's important to understand that you're an intern and you're learning. And if you don't ask the question, then people aren't going to know that you have a question. They're not going to know that you need clarity on something. And so you'd rather ask the question than end up doing the project or whatever it is in a way that doesn't actually make sense. It's not the way the supervisor wanted you to do it, because again, you didn't ask the question, right? So always ask the question, always take the opportunity to do that. And the other big thing is to show initiative. And that is something that a lot of people don't do either, because, and what I mean by this is, so for example, you're done with your project and you're sitting there and you have nothing to do. So what do? Do you go talk to your supervisor and ask them like, hey, I need help, or I'm done, what else is there to do? Or do you sit there and twiddle your thumbs? So that's also where it's just like, go ask for what else needs to be done. And also raise your hand and say, yes, I'll take this on, or, I have this idea and how can we move this forward, and things like that. So again, take the opportunity, show the initiative, and do whatever you can do to really show your worth in that space. So who can do an internship? I wanted to make sure I address this question because I know there are a variety of people in this room. We have folks that are in high school, we have folks that are, new freshmen, we have folks that are, maybe in graduate school, or folks that are maybe mid-career. And an internship can be done by anybody at any point in their life, any point in their career. Obviously, you have to take into consideration, your capacity, your other commitments and things like that. But it is something that is really open to anybody. So I did want to make sure I addressed that and really made it a point to say that, because I think a lot of times there's this stigma that if you're not in a certain age group or certain industry, that you can't do an internship, and that's not true. It really is a space for everyone to be in. And then when should you do an internship? This is a big question that I used to get, and when I was working with my undergraduate students is, well, I'm a freshman, should I do an internship now? Or I'm a senior, should I wait? When should I do this internship? And I always tell my students, do an internship whenever you want, do it, and do it frequently. Like for me, freshman year, the summer after freshman year, yeah, you might not have the skills necessarily. You might be building up to that. There are still things that you can do, and there are still skills that you have. So it's really understanding what that is and being realistic about those skills, but still being able to take advantage of opportunities that are coming your way. So now's the time to do it. So take advantage and really, build your skills and put yourself out there. And that is me. And I wanted to say thank you. And let's see, I'm going to take some time to answer some questions. Let's see what we got going on right here. Let's see, one individual is asking, hi, just wondering if the internship is suitable for more mature students who have a lot of experience, but it hasn't transferred to success in the professional world. So Rochelle, hopefully that my question just right now my response answered that question for you. It can be, I think again, there might be sometimes stigma attached to that. I think that's kind of why you're asking this question, is because people always assume, oh, internships are only for undergraduate students or for high school students. But no, I think anyone can really do an internship. And I think it's a great way to show success and to show how your skills are transferable. And a lot of times when we're thinking about mid-career changers and things like that, it's a great way to actually gain that experience in that field that you're switching to, because you haven't necessarily gained it in the space that you're currently in. So yeah, it's definitely something that folks can do at any age, at any point. If you have questions, please go ahead and type them into the Q&A box, and I'll be able to answer them there. I'm going to go through the chats really quickly to see if folks have other questions that are popping up there, but the Q&A space is really the space where I would like to see those questions. And remember, if you have the question, somebody else probably has it too. And I'm only seeing it, so no one else can see it. I won't say your name, so please feel comfortable to ask the question. I also saw a few folks raise their hands. So if folks have a comment or something along those lines that they would like to share as well, I'm happy to do that. Okay, how long does the internship take is the next question. So internships can range in time period. I've done internships that are semester long, a year long, you know, a summer long. It really, really depends on the company. It depends on the academic program. It depends on your availability. Typically, if we're thinking about academic space internships, they tend to follow the academic year. So they'll be like, say, for example, for the fall semester or the spring semester or the summer semester, or they'll be from like fall to spring, meaning a full academic year. And sometimes they don't follow that schedule. Sometimes companies are following their own schedule, and it really is, you know, January to December because that's what they've decided. So it really, really differs. It really, really depends on what the time period looks like. So hi, international students who are not in the US, can they do an internship? So, you know what? Yeah, in this day and age, you definitely can. I mean, think about it. I'm sitting in my room at home. We're all working in remote spaces right now. And so I think today's day and age actually gives us more of an opportunity to work across international boundaries. So yes, you could definitely do that. It depends, again, there are going to be restrictions. It depends on whether you're going through a program via the university, or whether, you know, you're applying directly to an organization. So it really depends on what that looks like, but 100% people anywhere in the world can do internships in the US or outside the US. It goes both ways. Other questions? I saw some of my colleagues who are also raising their hands. Folks, if you have comments that you want to share with students, feel free to, you know, chat them, or, you know, I don't know if Matt, if you can unmute anybody, but. Jenny, I just saw you pop up. Do you have something to say?
No, I don't have anything to say. I'm just here enjoying your presentation.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you wanted to say something. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, next question. Are there specific professions that use interns on a more regular basis than other professions? So I guess this depends on how you define profession and define using internships. I would say typically in terms of getting an internship in fields, most fields will have internship programs and most fields will take on an intern. There are some professions that actually require an internship, and so it's built into the academic space. So for example, my counseling program, I was required to do 2 one-year internships. That was mandatory. Think about things like doctors, for example. Residency is basically an internship, a really long internship, but an internship nonetheless. I think the words that we use can differentiate depending on the profession. So it might be a practicum, it might be field study or field work, it might be residency, like I mentioned for medicine. So there are a lot of professions that will require that kind of preparation before you go into the professional world. Think about like therapists have to get licensed, or think about hairstylists that have to get licensed and be under supervision before they can actually fully start working and doing things like that. So yes, there are professions that will require internships, but then also others that tend to, you know, take on professions or take them on in a little bit different manner. I hope that answers your question. Other questions? Let's see, I'm gonna look to the chat real quick to see if there's anything else popping up. Okay, so could you tell me the difference between internship, difference from internship with OPT for international students, please? Was one that came in the chat. So OPT is, okay. It's a very complicated situation. It has to do with the legalities of being able to work in the US or not. So you can definitely use an internship to get an OPT opportunity, which is typically an opportunity that's more like a job and it has to do with visa regulations. I don't fully know the entire space of visa regulations, so I don't want to misguide you or misadvise you. But what I can tell you is that that is something that if you were to come to Extension, we have advisors here that would be able to answer those questions and be able to talk you through that space. There is a difference, but it's legalities and visa related. So I don't want to go into that again to misinform you in any way. Anything else? We have a couple more minutes if folks have other questions. Okay, if there are internships in the writing field. Yes, there are internships in the writing field. I mean, think about folks that have worked at magazines or, you know, at newspapers and things like that. But even when you think about writing, it's actually a really good question in terms of thinking about what a field means and what an internship means. So for example, writing is a field where when I think about writing, the first thing that came to mind for me was newspapers, magazines, and things like that. But writing is a very general term, right? You can write content for a firm like an Apple or a Berkeley or whatever it might be, because you're writing content, right? That could be for newsletters, that could be for a website, that could be, you know, for brochures. So it really depends on what that means. But yes, there are definitely internships for writing, and that's a skill that you actually do need to hone in on. So yeah, definitely, 100%. So let's see. So in terms of the programs that you can participate in at Berkeley and add an internship, we've actually opened up all of our programs to be able to do an internship. So we have a variety of options. So for example, we have our data science programs, our project management, let's see, what else do we have? Data analytics, marketing. Now I'm blanking on these opportunities. Basically, almost all of our programs will have an internship opportunity that is available to a student if they participate. That's a new space that we've opened up, actually. Let's see. What's the difference between a summer job and an internship? Okay, so the difference between a job and an internship is actually, it's not that clear usually. It really just depends on how someone's defining it. So some folks will say that it might be a paid internship, for example, but they call it an internship because they're seeing it as an educational opportunity. It's really an opportunity for you to learn and to gain those skills, and it's meant to have more mentorship, and it's meant to understand that you are coming from that space of learning. Whereas a summer job, they're expecting you to come in typically and know the skills and know the opportunity, or know the space that you're in. Typically, I mean, they can be very fuzzy in terms of how they're defined, but the internship tends to be more of like, this is an educational opportunity. And we're here to mentor you and support you. Let's see. Studied civil engineering and I'm interested in studying a master's degree at UC. Is it within the internship program? So in terms of a master's degree at UC, I mean, I'm sure that the engineering department has internships that are available. The current internship program that I was talking about through extension is specifically for the extension program, so not necessarily civil engineering, but I can tell you there are going to be plenty of civil engineering opportunities at Silicon Valley in general for you. So if you decide to come to Berkeley, 100%, if you have the appropriate skills and you do the appropriate amount of work to look for internships, you shouldn't have a problem finding an internship. Any other questions? Okay, well, we're about at time. So thank you again, everybody, for taking the time to join us today. I hope this was, informative. And if you have more questions, please feel free to email us at bginternship@berkeley.edu. And also remember to complete the survey after the presentation, because that's also a way for you to get more information about our career services and our internship programs. And we really want to hear from you about how this event went for you and what you thought in general. So thank you all, and have a good night or good morning, wherever you might be in the world. Thank you.